I must say that I'm, again, very deeply honored to have been given this opportunity to be here with you in this visionary conference and in this great place of learning and inquiry. I must say that I've always been rather partial to Warwick. And let me confess up front that it's not just because it is such a university of world acclaim. I'll tell you the story. Sometime in 1975, our then young and dashing military head of state, General Yakubu Gowon, was overthrown in a military coup while he was away from home at a conference in Kampala, Uganda. In those days in Africa, if you were ousted in a coup, you were either killed or detained. General Gowon was fortunate. He escaped here to the UK. He was offered a place here in Warwick. While he was here, another coup attempt was made, which led to the unfortunate death of the then head of state. General Gowon, he was, as many believed then, falsely accused of being involved in the plot, and some of his adversaries called for his extradition. As the folklore goes, the British authorities and Warwick stood solidly behind him, and he remained here safe. As a young, brash, hot-headed Nigerian, I decided that if I were ever to lead a revolution and it failed, I would head for Warwick. This place of freedom and refuge, and I'd remain here until the dust settled. Of course, there's another good reason why I am partial to Warwick. My son Fee is here, and he's also one of the organizers of this summit. But that's not exactly the reason why I am happy that he's here. When he's here, life is cheaper for me. My car, for one thing, is safe. So I really am pleased that he's here. And I'm also, of course, excited to be here with you all. And I thank you again very much for this honor. The theme of the summit, I'm told, is Ubuntu, relighting the fire of Africa. Ubuntu, as we've heard already, is an Nguni term with variants in other dialects. And as the Zulus would say, Umuntu, Ugumuntu, Ngabuntu, which means that a person is a person through others. I am what I am because of who we all are. It's a belief in the universal bond of humanity. We validate our own humanity through our responsibility to other human beings, regardless of race, color, gender, or belief. Indeed, Africa is because of the rest of the world. Africa is because of the rest of the world. My thesis this morning is then essentially Africa's historic responsibility to the rest of the world. And I've titled my thoughts, The Africa Century. So my topic will be the Africa Century. 2 weeks ago, I was privileged to give a talk at the Harvard Business School. It was titled Africa Rising. And as I reflected further on the subject, it became clearer to me that aside from the encouraging narrative of some of the giant strides that Africa has made in the last 15 years, there is a fairly more profound insight. And that insight is that it is this century that is the African century. And before I elaborate, let me say that neither that expression, that is the African century, nor the general notion that it implies is original. Indeed, many African leaders before me, such as Thabo Mbeki and Nkosazana Zuma, have used the same words to describe the great advances that Africa is making, especially in contrast to the last century. The variant that I add to it is this, that this is the African century because in this century, Africa will, for good or ill, play the defining role in global development. Let me repeat that. That in this century, Africa will, for good or for ill, play the defining role in global development. And it implies that Africa will shape and will matter in all of the trends that will shape the future of the world in this century. I say for good or for ill, because either scenario is possible. Given the checkered history of Africa's development, it's not always the case that the glaringly obvious path to progress and development is taken. If Africa fails, the global impact will be catastrophic. If it succeeds, the global impact will be unimaginable. But there are at least 4 important respects in which Africa will hold the balance of world development. First is in world population, demography. Second is in environment and climate change. Third is production, especially agriculture, manufacturing, and technology. Fourth is social exclusion and its implications for global security. I'll examine first what I will describe as the doomsday scenarios in these 4 different areas or 4 different indicators before looking at our present efforts and projections for the future. Let's take population. By 2035, Africa will have 1.2 billion people. Nigeria, its most populous country, will become the 4th most populous nation in the world. Over 50% of that number will be young persons under the age of 25. Today, 60% of the unemployed in Africa are young people. And if we do not change the trajectory of our socioeconomic development, we would have millions of jobless young people in the prime of their lives. And we will see that that number will be largely illiterate and poorly trained. The workforce will be ill-equipped to man any industrial revolution or take advantage on scale of technology. The anger, disillusionment, and hopelessness of these young people will drive social unrest, compel more desperate migration northwards, and present a fertile recruiting ground for extremist groups and ideologies. If social conditions remain tenuous, even the well-educated will be tempted into migration and contribute further to the brain drain. Now, how about the environment and climate change? So it's generally agreed that although Africa has contributed least to global warming, it is and will suffer most of its consequences. Indeed, we are already seeing extreme weather events such as flash floods, desertification, drought, and unseasonal occurrences in several parts of Africa. Lake Chad, Africa's 4th largest lake, surrounded by Nigeria, Niger, Chad, and Cameroon, in 1960 covered 25,000 square kilometers. It has now shrunk to less than 1,350 square kilometers. So the water it provided for irrigation, for fishing, for livestock, for millions, is now practically non-existent. Lake Tanganyika in East Africa, and that's one of the oldest lakes in the world, located in the western branch of the Great African Rift Valley, flowing through countries like Tanzania, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Burundi, and Zambia, was recently declared the threatened lake of 2017. Why? Lake Tanganyika is adversely affected also by human activity in the form of climate change, deforestation, overfishing, and hydrocarbon exploitation. Again, clearly, if we maintain the same trajectory and we don't implement an aggressive plan for the environment, Africa might be the place where the perfect storm will occur. What's the perfect storm? It is that apocalyptic event predicted by John Beddington, the former scientific advisor to the UK government. And he says that it will occur when competing needs for food, water, and energy race ahead of our response to that, especially our response despite the needs that we have to compensate for in climate change. To quote him, he said, and I quote, "It is predicted that by 2030, the world will need to produce around 50% more food and energy, together with 30% more fresh water, whilst mitigating and adapting to climate change. This threatens to create a perfect storm of global events. There's not going to be a complete collapse, thank God, but things will start getting really worrying if we don't tackle these problems." End of quote. As for production, that is, agriculture, manufacturing, and technology, Africa's share of global GDP is only 3%. And unless production is ramped up across agriculture, across manufacturing, and technology, the outlook for the continent and the rest of the world will be troubling indeed. Take agriculture. Agricultural production and productivity is well below full potential. Although the continent has 65% of globally available arable land, up to 50% of it is uncultivated. Assuming we continue at the pace we're going now, Africa will be unable to feed its own population and will lack the resources to import. And as the food needs of the world rises with population, and of course the population growth, as I said earlier, is growing exponentially, a significant proportion of the world's arable land, which as we've seen is in Africa, will only be suboptimally productive. The outcome will be an unsustainable dependence on food aid and continued insecurity, food insecurity. In manufacturing, Africa is at the risk of what is described as premature deindustrialization. In other words, the service sector is growing rapidly in African countries, while it is yet to experience industrialization in the first place. This situation has serious implications for job creation, competitiveness, and participation in the global value chains. It is further complicated by digitalization and the fourth industrial revolution, and we know that is going to create the loss of several traditional jobs. And we'll talk about that a little as we go further. The fourth area that bears close watching is inequality and social exclusion. The UNDP has reported that every single African country is less equal today than they were in 2010 on account of lack of jobs and opportunity and lingering extreme poverty. Illiteracy is a factor. In sub-Saharan Africa, 1 in 3 adults is illiterate, and over 50% of women are illiterate. Youth literacy in sub-Saharan Africa is the lowest of any other region. Now, literacy, as defined by UNESCO, is merely someone who can read and write a short, simple statement about their life. Now, that's a very low threshold. And of course, does not begin to address the issues about functional literacy in the 21st century. Besides, high levels of malnutrition in children also mean stunting in growth and poor development of the brain. The ability of both individual and society to develop and compete is impeded by the low mental capacity of its growing population. So this, what I've described, is the doomsday scenario. Africa's population growing exponentially, food production not being able to match population growth, nutritional inadequacy, a rise in transhuman conflict due to shrinking vegetation and water, lack of jobs and opportunity for a massively poorly educated youth population, leading to vulnerability to extremism and aggressive illegal migration. But perhaps most troubling, immediately, is that Africa runs the risk of becoming a convenient breeding ground for extremist groups, from where they can launch out to the rest of the world. A horrifying situation indeed. If in the next 3 decades Africa drops the ball on any of the 4 indicators I've mentioned, there will be a tragedy for the entire world. Neither Africa nor the rest of the world can afford to have these scenarios playing out. As we say in Nigeria, God forbid. But let us flip this doomsday scenarios and see what it is that is being done on the 4 indicators and what needs to be done to ensure that the 21st century will be the Africa century in its most positive sense. With regard to the environment, Africa presents huge potential and opportunity for itself and for the world. The perfect storm can be averted by focusing on the green economy as a source of growth. The green economy is one that promotes environmental sustainability and equitable economic growth at the same time. This can happen, for instance, through investments in renewable energy, energy-sufficient processes, and clean technology. Solar installation can, for instance, be used to tackle Africa's huge energy deficit while creating jobs. Up to 2/3 of Africans do not have access to electricity, and it's quite feasible to expect that the continent will take a huge chunk of the estimated 24 million jobs that will arise from operations and maintenance and manufacturing of solar systems. Of Nigeria's 180 million people, about 20 million households have no power. And as part of the efforts to diversify power sources in order to improve access, we started a program of providing solar power in several thousand homes in rural villages back home. We started in a village called Wuna. Wuna is a village just outside Abuja. Abuja is the capital of Nigeria. Wuna is an agrarian community, is not on the national grid, and has no other source of power. So to charge their phones, an entrepreneur with a small generator runs the service. So you take your phone to his shop once a day or so to charge your phone, and you pay a small fee. Life in Wuna used to shut down at about 7 p.m. until daylight. But working with the PPP model, the government-owned NDPHC partnered with Azuri Technology, a private solar company, to provide a domestic solar solution. Azuri had provided the same end-to-end service in East Africa, a solar home system, including a payment system. The equipment cost about 1,900 naira, which is about £5 to £6 a month. Every home had one mounted on their roof in Wuna, and for the first time in its existence, the village now has running water, solar-powered. The school has power. The school hall is now used as a community hall in the evenings. Each home has 4 points of light. Children can now stay up and do some studying at night. Many of Wuna's women can process their millet and yams at night. New jobs have been created for solar installers, maintenance, and management of payment systems. Only one guy has lost his business in Wuna, the phone charger. Every household can now charge their own phones. And this is a trend everywhere you look. With more solar power deployment, a lot more is going to happen. A lot more activity, a lot more commercial activity, a lot more jobs in maintenance and other systems. Algeria, for example, created 3,500 jobs just in the construction of a 14-grid connected solar PV projects in 2015, with 700 permanent jobs expected in operation and management. Kenya has built Africa's largest wind farm at Lake Turkana, providing 310 megahertz of reliable, low-cost energy to Kenya's national grid. 15% of the country's installed capacity is now solar. Its construction created more than 2,000 local jobs. The point being made, especially for solar power, is that there are just millions of homes waiting to be serviced, especially in the rural areas. Besides, our solar power demand in Africa and our relatively cheap labor costs make Africa a logical candidate for solar panel and components manufacturing. And a lot of the smart money is looking in the direction of investing in solar manufacturing in Africa. Agriculture is another sector where actions in Africa can have positive outcomes for the entire world. With the right mix of policies, Africa can feed its growing population in a sustainable manner and meet nutritional standards, while also becoming a large-scale supplier of grain and food to other parts of the world that are shifting out of agricultural production. To take the example of Nigeria, we are undertaking a concerted effort in agriculture to boost security, food security, and create jobs for our rapidly growing population by excluding our reliance and reducing our reliance, rather, on food imports, which run into billions of dollars annually. Our rice, wheat, and fish imports have cost us nearly $4 billion per annum over the past 2 decades. Through investments in agricultural inputs, machinery, finance, agricultural extension, we're seeing growing results, with agricultural sectors demonstrating positive GDP growth even while the country was in recession in the last year. As of the end of 2017, we're producing 10 million tons of paddy rice, and rice imports have dropped by 80%. 6 million new jobs have been created in agriculture. Local and foreign investors from the Dangote Group to New Hope Group to Heineken are taking note, expanding their positions in Nigeria's very dynamic agricultural value chain. And they're going into maize, to cashew nuts, to sorghum, to millet, etc. With over 50% of the world's arable land and over half of that uncultivated, it's becoming clearer that the world will be looking to Africa as its food basket. Just to take China's demand alone, China has 27% of the world's population, but only 7% of the world's arable land for agriculture. So China needs, and has asked even Nigeria, for 2 million tons of hybrid soya beans per annum for livestock feed and vegetable oil, and we've not been able to meet that demand yet. Sesame seed from Africa is also in high demand. About 2 million tons per annum is the demand from China, from Vietnam, from Japan, and the Arab countries. Sesame seed oil and the cake is used for confectionaries. That demand also is largely unmet. China also requires 2.3 million tons of cassava chips and cassava products for industrial starch and ethanol. And we've not been able to meet that demand. Neither have we been able to meet China's demand for cocoa. How about goat meat? 120,000 carcasses of goat meat is required weekly in different Arab countries. There's still a major gap in supply here as well. And goat meat, by the way, is a very enjoyable delicacy. Maybe that's why we're not producing enough. Most of Vietnam's demand for over 2.5 million tons of cashew is also unmet. So Africa's role as food provider to the world, and especially in the next few decades, is clear. The opportunity will provide millions of additional jobs, and revenues will grow exponentially. If we process and take advantage of the agribusiness value chain, there is bound to be even more activity, even more jobs. Besides, Africa is the logical frontier of the green economy. Our credentials in sustainable agricultural practices are excellent. We have arable, largely organic lands that have not been tampered with at all by some of what we see are largely organic lands, have not been contaminated by chemical fertilizers, which means that Africa can produce food with near 100% environmentally sustainable labels for most of the world's demand, including premium-paying customers. We may also emphasize our environmental credentials by virtue of sustainable land practices. Our oil palm plantations in particular will be able to go into markets where competitors cannot go without breaking environmental rules, such as Southeast Asian oil palm production. The projections on the African food and beverage market is exciting. This is a market that's worth up to $1 trillion and will increase by 2030 to about $1.5 trillion. Foreign direct investment is projected in agriculture to go from about $10 billion in 2010 to $45 billion as of 2018. In addition, the growth of this sector would reduce poverty twice as fast as growth in other sectors, especially if we're able to develop the entrepreneurial capacity of our youth in agribusiness to take advantage of the extremely lucrative agricultural business value chains. Rwanda and Ethiopia are excellent examples of non-resource-rich African countries that are attaining impressive growth. And they're able to do so because of their focus on agricultural practices that are contemporary and that are cutting edge. Agriculture accounts for 50% of Ethiopia's employment capacity, and in Rwanda, close to 60%. What perhaps is most exciting is the emergence of young, innovative entrepreneurs in Africa, providing thousands of new jobs along the agricultural value chain. A few examples: Fahad Awad, a 29-year-old entrepreneur from Tanzania, who set up a cashew processing facility in Tanzania. The factory brings international standards and traceability to cashew nuts. The company's flagship processing facility in Zanzibar has an installed capacity of 2,500 tons per annum, and recently raised $500,000 investment from the Africa Enterprise Challenge Fund to establish another processing facility in Mtwara in southeastern Tanzania. Ndidi Nwuneli is a Nigerian entrepreneur and also a social entrepreneur. She founded the AACE Food Processing and Distribution. AACE is an agro-processing company, and it sources its produce from small cluster farms in rural communities across West Africa. It also facilitates access to microfinance and farming technologies for all of the farming groups that is associated with. AACE was founded about 8 years ago, and today its annual turnover is in excess of several million dollars. I think it's estimated to be about, its annual turnover is estimated to be about $20 million every year. Sheon and Shei Abolaji started what they describe as Wilson Juice, a fresh juice company that they started in southwest Nigeria. Their main brand is called Wilson's Lemonade, and is sold now at almost every major grocery in Nigeria, 150 locations in all. The bottles and every ingredient, lemon, local hibiscus flower, sugarcane, are all produced in Nigeria. Fatima Wushishi is the Chief Operating Officer of Fifth Harvest Limited, a post-harvest solutions provider. The company strengthens the value chains of crops such as groundnuts, rice, and maize. Their solutions targeted at local farmers range from agro-commodities, procurement services, to storage services, as well as warehouse receipt finance. Blondie Opuzom is the CEO and founder of Bath Candy Company, a skincare, bath, and body social enterprise. The company is unique for its insistence on environmentally friendly products. Lanre Keru is an agricultural economist and CEO of Farm City Limited, a farmland focused on growing vegetables using hydroponic farming techniques. There's also Babangana Agriculture. This is a company that is involved in agricultural franchise. The company found a need and opportunity in the fact that smallholder farms were unable to break even due to low economies of scale. So the company deploys a model that franchises farmer groups and provides them with cost-effective end-to-end services and training, and finds markets for their produce. All of these entrepreneurs that I've mentioned across Africa, all of them are under 40 years old, all of them. And there's just an increasing number. And there's just an increasing number of them day by day. Manufacturing can also be part of this positive story, despite fears of premature deindustrialization. The point has been made elsewhere, and is that there is a potential 85 million jobs that can be relocated to Africa from China through the movement of sunset industries as a result of the increasing wage gap between unskilled workers there and those in African countries. The ramping up of production under this scenario will be assisted by the establishment of the Continental Free Trade Area, which will create an Africa-wide market that enables the economies of scale on which successful manufacturing depends. This CFTA should be ready this year, and is one of the major discussions that will be on the table at the Africa Summit this weekend. Also, because of the relative underdevelopment of the African industrial sector, it is possible for the continent to take a more environmentally friendly approach to industrial development. Just to go back slightly to the point I've just made, because China, which used to be the world's factory, is, of course, experiencing higher wages, Africa is going to be the next logical place for most of those manufacturing jobs to come to. And we're already seeing signs of that. We're opening in Nigeria special economic zones, and there's a great deal of interest from Chinese countries, from Chinese companies that want to come and invest in the SEZs. Simple. Labor costs are cheaper. It's easier for us also to transport those goods to many parts of Europe and also to the continental free trade area, which we are opening up in Africa. This is an excellent opportunity, and the prognosis is excellent. An excellent example of some of the rigorous planning also that's going especially into how we can use industry, in an environmentally friendly way and ensure that our industries are compliant with all of the environmental trends or the environment-friendly trends that we want to establish, is one that we've seen in Ethiopia, the Hawassa Industrial Park, which has one of the most advanced effluent discharge systems in the world. And in the Hawassa Park, we have a zero-emission water treatment plant. And that zero-emission water treatment plant is one that is going to be replicated in many different parts of Africa. So many other countries are looking at that example. Technology especially is, in my view, an important plank in Africa's job creation plans. In and of itself, technology provides opportunities in coding, creating the applications, and so many other aspects of digital technology that we can take advantage of. So today, African technology talent can find employment around the world and ultimately contribute to the growth and development of their own countries. Fortunately, on account of the age in which we now live, the age of outsourcing, teleconferencing, remote working, and so on, that is now very possible. Andela, some of us here might have heard of Andela, is a good example. Andela is a company that operates primarily in Nigeria and Kenya. Thank you. Andela is a company, I've said, that operates primarily in Kenya and Nigeria. It was co-founded by a young Nigerian called Aboyeji. The company trains young Africans living in Africa to code and then find jobs for them in Western countries where the demand for skilled coders is high. By the very nature of coding, it can be done remotely, which means that talents can stay back in Lagos or Nairobi or elsewhere and still earn decent salaries, build thriving ecosystems, and contribute the value of their salaries and taxes to their home countries. So Andela is operating a model which can be replicated in several parts of the world. Now, I want to say that it is in the area of technology, in particular, that I believe that Africa will find some of its most interesting opportunities. Because the most important developments for Africa in digital technology is how young digital entrepreneurs have created solutions to challenges, especially in the various industrial value chains, and have created thousands of jobs in the process. And I'll just give you a few examples. There's Thrive Agric, an innovative agric tech startup supported by a Nigerian company called Ventures Capital. Ventures Platform is really a venture capitalist and invests in several startups. And they have invested in Thrive Agric, which was founded by Uka Eje and Ayo Arikawe. One is a farmer, the other is a software engineer. The company leverages technology to aggregate finances for smallholder farmers. They also provide inputs and farming services that increase farm yields fourfold for thousands of ordinary farmers around the country. There are also big data collection companies. Mobile Forms is one, Form Plus is another. The Mobile Forms platform is creating new employment opportunities for thousands of Africans as data collection agents to collect data on farms and maps of farmlands. So this also gives farmers better access to finance. I hear also that they're about to roll out one of Africa's first coin offerings. So cryptocurrencies, here we come. Flutterwave and Paystack are also two African companies that have pioneered payment systems with innovative technology, and they are doing incredibly well. Flutterwave has processed $1.2 billion in payments in 10 million transactions in less than 3 years of operations. Paystack, which was founded just in 2015, is doing turnover now of over $5 million in payments monthly. Another African digital technology success story is the RAC Center. It's a wholly Nigerian-owned carrier-neutral data center, the first of its type in Africa. It's in essence a co-location data center that holds IT assets for businesses and delivers cloud solutions to them. It now hosts multinational companies and connects all of the undersea cables servicing the Atlantic coast of Africa. There's no question that technology will provide for Africa the answer to many of the big issues that confront us. Educating as also finding jobs for the millions of new entrants into the job market. Technology can enable us, give African youth an education that is fit for the times in terms of science, technology, engineering, and maths, as well as training across a range of skills relevant to the 21st century job market. I'll come back to this crucial point presently. A low-hanging fruit is using technology in the training of large numbers of young people, leapfrogging traditional obstacles such as access to books and educational materials, especially in the rural areas. Our government, as part of our social investment program, engaged 200,000 unemployed graduates from practically every local government area in Nigeria, and we're employing 300,000 more. The program is called the Empower Volunteer Program. The idea is that these volunteers will work as teachers, farm extension workers, and public health officers. But during the course of their employment, they have access to a broad range of technology and entrepreneurial training, and all of that material is loaded onto electronic tablets given to them and is also available on an open portal. 2 points to note. First, the training that number, over 200,000 simultaneously in far-flung parts of the country, would have been practically impossible without technology. Second, training in relevant technology and entrepreneurship skills is crucial to preparing these young people for the new market for digital jobs and the numerous extensions. Now this brings us to the big question, educating young people in Africa for the jobs of the 21st century. There's no question in my mind that we must radically change not just what we teach, but how we teach. We are in a new educational era. The emphasis on academic knowledge and general certifications will not be useful for many of the new jobs. New curricula and training techniques must be applied. We must begin from the premise that most low-skilled service jobs are disappearing forever as digital technology and robotics take over. Also suddenly, bank tellers, shop assistants, production line workers are disappearing with the development of online services and industrial robotics, respectively. But as someone said, if history is anything to go by, the technologies that take away jobs will also provide and create new jobs. The technologies that take away all of these jobs will provide new jobs. The only problem is that the new jobs will need a different set of skills, maybe more complicated than the previous ones. In this case, digital skills. And to quote a source, The explosion in industrial robotics, for example, is eliminating thousands of assembly line jobs, but is creating a demand for people who can design, who can manufacture, who can program and maintain these machines. Digital skills in this new era are like what vocational education used to be in the old era. Most of the education will be more democratized, it will be online, and made available to millions at the same time. The courses will be relevant to work-based skills required by industry. They will therefore be dynamic as industry needs change. I'm sure many of us are familiar with Udacity and online educators like that. Many of them, of course, point in the direction that we're headed. They develop the curriculum for their online training for job-ready skills in collaboration with industry. Many of these online educators are already affiliated with AT&T, Google, Facebook, and several other such major concerns. Africa has a unique opportunity to train its large youth population to become the best digitally trained people in the world, beginning from primary schools, where code writing and other digital skills can be taught. And so, ladies and gentlemen, there is no question at all that this century is the Africa century, where Africa will either be the world's nemesis or it will be its savior. Three things will decide. 1, leadership. 2, leadership. 3, leadership. Visionary and innovative leadership. But we're not now talking of merely political leadership. After all, which political leader has influenced the direction of world development as profoundly as the likes of the founders of Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, or Google, and several others? So the leaders we're talking about are this generation of African youth and their friends around the world. Some of them who are in this room, who see the incredible opportunity to revolutionize a continent, who see this continent as their business in the next few years. Fortunately, technology has created a level playing field, and so you don't need any invitation to the table. Your ideas and drive is what will earn you a place. But if I were a betting man and I was asked, will Africa fly or fail? I'll surely put my money on Africa flying, especially with all of you guys. So welcome to the Africa Century. Thank you very much. Thank you.